Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest podcast from NLP with Parky. Today's guest, just like to welcome Stephen Burns from Mindschool, and also, if you remember back from the podcast with Brian, who was a co-founder of Scottish Centre of NLP. Well, fantastic. I've got the other co-founder, Stephen Burns, as the co-founder of the Scottish Centre of NLP. I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to have you here, Steve. It means a lot. It really does, and it's amazing that to have you and the experience that you took me through in the practitioner course, and also the Change Experts Academy. Your expertise has been phenomenal, but I'll explain a wee bit of that later on if that's all right. So first of all, I'd just like to ask, please, can you explain a wee bit about your journey, how you get into Mindschool and how it came about, and also the Scottish Centre of NLP, and how you managed to get into NLP and hypnosis, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So believe it or not, I've been doing this now for roughly, I think, 24 years. I'm hoping that you're thinking that I look far too young for that, but that joke doesn't seem to get too many laughs these days, unfortunately. But yes, I've been doing it for roughly around about 24 years. So I'm now approaching 46. So I did my first training, I think it was 21 years old, but I was well into like self-help and personal development well before then. And for me, it kind of all started, I had a lot of confidence issues when I was younger. In fact, there was a lot more going on, as well as a lack of confidence. And I really was in a bit of a dark place in my sort of like kind of late teens. And at the time, I was thinking about going down a more conventional, sort of traditional route by, contacting the GP and then seeing a psychotherapist. And I'd even gone to the extent of going to the GP and getting an appointment because I just didn't know what was going on with my mind. It was all over the place. I felt totally out of control. I felt anxious, lacking in confidence. You name it, the list goes on and on. But for some reason, that more sort of conventional route just didn't feel right for me. I know there's a lot of work that's been done recently about destigmatizing mental health issues, but certainly, 20 odd years ago, especially for a man, actually having to admit that you needed help and going down that sort of psychotherapeutic route was a real big deal for me. And it just didn't feel right. So I decided to take a more alternative approach, and I investigated things like self-hypnosis, meditation. Mindfulness wasn't a thing back then. I'm really making myself feel old here. And also this thing called NLP, which stands for, of course, neuro-linguistic programming. And pretty soon, just by applying a couple of different tools and techniques, I started to notice a difference. Not all of my problems disappeared straight away, of course, but I started to notice a real positive shift in the way that I was thinking and the way that I was feeling. And it didn't take too long either. And for me, that was a big convincer. For me, I never forget that the real kind of big moment for me was when I read a book called The Hypnotic World of Paul McKenna. I'm sure people watching are well aware of the famous hypnotist. And in the book, he talked about this technique that you could use where you were basically using your imagination to feel more confident. And the way that he sold it was it was a technique where you use your imagination to feel more confident, but you could then take that confidence and then place it into a particular area of your life. And one of the big challenges I was having at the time was social confidence. So I was going out for a few drinks with my mates. I think I was only 18 at the time, on a Saturday night. So I took myself through this technique faithfully every single day on the build up to the weekend. And then by the time I went out for a few drinks with my friends, the difference was unbelievable. I just felt so much more confident. I was looking at people in the eye. There was this, real sense of energy across my chest. I just felt absolutely fantastic. And my friends actually thought I was on drugs. They were like, "What did you take tonight, Stephen?" And for me, it was a very strange experience because my friends thought that I had become like a different person. But for me, it felt like I was becoming the person that deep down I knew I was. And it was all because of, practicing this imagination technique to help me sort of train my brain to think a little bit differently. So for me, from that point onwards, I was totally hooked. I wanted to learn everything I possibly could about NLP, about hypnosis, self-hypnosis, meditation, all kinds of weird stuff out there. And that kind of took me on the start of the journey. And then I guess the rest is history. I started coaching. I did some formal training down in London. And then, eventually, I started at a training school with Brian Costello, as you mentioned earlier on. And we're now, teaching, lots of people every year the same skills that we learned way back then. So yeah, it started off in a very difficult place, but I guess most of these sort of transformational journeys do. And now I'm in a much better place. And, I'm actually, teaching other people to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You mentioned Paul McKenna there. Is there anybody else that kind of influenced you to get into NLP and hypnosis?
Yeah, so I'm sure you've heard of Tony Robbins, the famous personal development motivational speaker. He's kind of Marmite. A lot of people like him. In fact, a lot of people love him. He has an almost like religious kind of cult-like following. But then a lot of other people don't particularly like him. So I read his book. It was called Unlimited Power. Now, I'm not hugely into Tony Robbins in terms of his live stuff, but one of the things that he is amazing at is his enthusiasm. He's so enthusiastic about, personal growth, about, becoming a better person, about self-improvement. And I think he sold it to me through his energy. So I think that was another book I read, along with, the Hypnotic World of Paul McKenna. Another major influence is Dr. Richard Bandler, who is one of the co-creators of NLP. My very first NLP training course was way back in London in 1999, and I did it with him, Paul McKenna, and a guy called Michael Breen. So for me, he was a real big inspiration. I really liked his life philosophies. He's a bit of a nutter, there's no doubt about it. But his philosophy was very much about, sure, you can use these techniques to be successful, to build businesses, to have money, to have lots of things in your life. But ultimately, the main thing is about creating happiness. It's about creating a sense of fulfillment and joy from life. Doesn't matter what you do. I mean, you may as well enjoy it. You should get some fun and some joy from it. So I think that philosophy really stuck with me. And I think it doesn't matter what I'm looking to do in life. I have to enjoy it. I have to get pleasure from it. If I don't, then what's the point in doing it? Even if you get money, I guess for me, that's not real wealth. You have to actually enjoy the process too. So I think Tony Robbins, Paul McKenna, and Richard Bandler, big inspirations in the beginning, and a lot of their messages still stay with me.
Yeah, I have noticed Tony Robbins. I have been me personally, I've been kind of looking up kind of Tony Robbins stuff, and you kind of see advertisement on Facebook and stuff with Tony Robbins conferences and stuff. But yeah, it really is. He is a inspirational guy, but like you say, it's Marmite. Yeah. I would, if anybody out there wants to check out Tony Robbins, you'll see and hear what Steve and I are kind of talking about. But yeah, the Mindschool, your business Mindschool, is how did that come about? Did you just create that? How did that come into the world? You've gave us a wee bit of insight into how you get into, but how did Mindschool? We know what the Scottish Centre of NLP can offer, but how did Mindschool come about, and what can Mindschool offer?
Yeah, so Mindschool is really all about teaching people how to run their own minds more effectively. Because I guess this has been, my own story throughout the last 20 years. Is I just wanted to. I didn't get into NLP and hypnosis to become a coach or become a trainer. That happened naturally. But for me, I got into it because I wanted to learn how to run my own mind. It basically wasn't doing what it was told when I was younger. So I wanted to figure out, the mysteries of the mind and how to use it in a way where you could create change that actually lasted, that you could do all kinds of cool stuff and feel different kinds of feelings that you wanted to feel. So that's pretty much been my journey for the last 20 odd years. And I still, to this day, pretty much every single day, I'll do some sort of technique, whether it's just a simple meditation, just to manage my mind so that I can feel better and be in a much more positive place. So Mindschool is where I've taken all of that understanding, all of that experience, all of that journey, and then put it into a kind of online academy so that people can actually learn how to run their mind more effectively as well. So it's basically me teaching all of the tools I've learned over the years to help people figure out, the mysteries of the mind so that they can actually use it as a powerful vehicle to get more of what they want. So that's a big passion of mine. I do believe it's that whole analogy about, you can teach someone you can give a man a fish or give a person a fish and they can eat for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, then, they can eat for a lifetime. I think when it comes to a lot of our mental health issues, at the real heart of it is people don't really know much about their minds. When things break down, they don't know how to fix it. They don't know how to look at things with a sense of self-awareness and actually make some adjustments so they can think and feel better. Obviously, things like therapy, coaching, very, very good vehicles to use. But I think ultimately, I want to teach people how they can run their own mind so that they don't necessarily have to rely on therapy. It's good when you need it, of course, but I think we should be increasing our own self-awareness so that we know how our mind works and how we can actually use it. So that's pretty much what the project's all about. There's a lot of other interesting things in the pipeline, but that's where we are at this present moment.
That's good, but yeah, and I'm actually in Mindschool as well, and yeah, it's lots of interesting stuff, and I would highly recommend it, folks. Just find out about it and go for it, and yeah, lots of nice stuff. Which kind of leads me on to the next question. Actually, is when people see, well, it's more so like in a general question with regards to Mindschool and the Scottish Centre of NLP. When you get the word out there, when people see the Mindschool brand and also the Scottish Centre of NLP brand, how do you get clients into the sessions, and how do you get onto the courses? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I think there's a very simple principle that we often go by, and that is that there's two steps to building any kind of business and getting out there and seeing clients. And the first one is tell people what you do, and the second one is keep telling them what you do. And there's lots of different mediums that you can use to do that. You can do like YouTube, like you're doing here, Martin. You can do blog posts. You can post on social media if you like that sort of stuff. Personally, I hate social media. It's like it just grates me. I just don't like the ecosystem that you're getting pulled into. But for some people, they love it. And they're very, very good at it as well. A lot better than I ever will be. But there's other ways as well. For us, for the Scottish Centre of NLP, the way that we did it was we just got out there and did speaking gigs. So we would do like very sort of cheap introductory sessions. And those introductory sessions would then lead on to other things, to paid courses. And that was the way that we did it. Our idea was we knew that we could strike a rapport with an audience between the two of us. So we just wanted to get out there and speak to as many people as we possibly could. So we wanted to pack in seminars. When we first started off, we only had like maybe 7 or 8 people in a room. But then gradually over time and, a lot of persistence, that eventually went up to maybe 20, 30, 40. And some of our, bigger things, pre-COVID, we were up at like, between 100 and 150 people for like one of our introductory seminars. So I think just getting out there and just speaking to as many people as you possibly can. If you don't want to do like kind of seminars, I would thoroughly recommend you do. If you want to run a business as a coach or as a trainer or a therapist, get out there and do talks. It's one of the best ways to promote yourself. But there are lots of other ways you can do it. You can just like anytime you see someone, for example, in Aldi or Tesco's, just drop in casually into the conversation of what you do. And it's amazing how that can accumulate over time. And you can end up with this really lovely conveyor belt of clients. So I think just to summarize, it really is about getting out there, telling people what you do, and then being relentless and then keeping on telling them what you do. And if you find that it's not really working after a certain period of time, then just tweak it, try a different approach, maybe change your pitch a little bit. Maybe you're coming on too strong, or maybe you're not coming on strong enough. And it's about giving yourself feedback and just changing things as you progress. And eventually, bit by bit, you get there, and it's almost like you reach this tipping point, and then all of a sudden people know who you are, they know your name, you've got a reputation for what you do, and then it becomes so much easier. The analogy I like to use, we talked about this before we started the podcast here, Martin, is it is a little bit like pushing a snowball up a hill. When we first push a snowball up a hill, it can be a lot of work. You have to, invest a lot of energy and a lot of effort. But then eventually you reach that tipping point right at the very top of the hill. And then all you need to do is let go of the snowball, and it runs from using its own momentum. It's very much the same in business. Just get out there, tell as many people as you possibly can, give yourself feedback, be relentless, and eventually, things get so much more easy.
That's really, that's a really good insight there, but just people might think you keep posting in different various Facebook groups or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Do you think from your point of view and your expertise in that, do you think people get fed up with regards to seeing the posts from, let's say, Mindschool or NLP with Parky, for example? Just say keep going and going and going, which is, yeah, I totally get that. Yes, keep speaking to people, but do you think people might get fed up? Do you ever find that people might get fed up with that? Or you keep going and going and going. I'm fed up hearing about this. You know what I mean? What's your take on it?
It's a really good question, actually. I think, and I think a lot of business owners do get concerned about that. I think there's a couple of points that's worth making here. I think, first of all, if you've done a little bit of research and you figure out what people really want, then that shouldn't be too much of an issue, especially for what we refer to as your dream clients. So these are people that they love your stuff, they love what you do, they like your personality, and they want to work with you. And you have a product that really fits with what they need, some sort of result that they want to accomplish. So I think if you've done a wee bit of research into what people actually want, and you're posting content that's relevant to their needs, then they won't get fed up, because they'll be enjoying the content, it's relevant, and it's actually helping them accomplish some kind of important result, or get some kind of need in their life. I think at the end of the day, though, there'll always be people that will read your stuff and will go, well, that's not really relevant to me, and they might get a little bit fed up. And you know what? That's totally okay, because they're not your audience. And I think that there's this thing about in business where we sometimes try to appeal to everyone. And I guess it's the kind of the sort of inner sort of people pleaser that's often in many business owners, but also, I guess, many people in general. But at the end of the day, if you're posting stuff and some people love it, and a lot of people are getting fed up, then that is totally okay. In fact, that's perfectly normal. That's a really good place, because you then want to just focus on the people who it is relevant for. So I think 2 points is, first of all, you do want to do some research and figure out, what people actually want to hear. What are the things that people are talking about? And you can see this. You'll see this on YouTube videos to do with your subject, your expertise. You can see this on blog post comments. You can see it on Facebook. So if you do a wee bit of research and figure out what people do want to hear and what they want to learn about, what results they want to accomplish, then you'll be able to laser in on those people, and they will definitely not get fed up with your material. They will be hugely appreciative of it. And for the people who do get fed up, well, I guess they're just not your audience. That's cool. You just want to focus on the people who it is relevant for. And that's a big lesson for a lot of business owners, but I think it's a big lesson for a lot of people in general, is you can't please all the people all the time. You can't be everybody's friend, and that's perfectly okay. You've only got a finite amount of energy, a finite amount of resources. So you do want to be focusing that like a laser beam on the people that you can help. So I think that's a big learning for most business owners. I'll be honest, I'm still on that journey myself. I still make the mistake of trying to please everybody, or putting content out there that is good for me, but maybe not relevant for other people. So I think it is important to do that research and really double down on the people who it is relevant for.
And just to kind of wrap this part of the podcast up, just even in the beginning when you were setting up your business, I know you talked about the snowball up the hill kind of thing, and how did you go over this hurdle mentally? When with the drip feeder clients, and I'm spreading the word, but where's all my clients? That kind of way. How did you cope with that mentally? And also, did you, and just for, I know Brian is gave up his day job and whatever, and put all his energy and resources into the setting up his business. Did you do the same?
No, I didn't do the same. So yeah, Brian kind of did the whole thing where he jumped off the cliff face and then hoped for the best, and that can work for a lot of people. But there's usually what I find is people who basically just quit their job and attempt to live their passion. A lot of the time it will fail, or it will fail in that moment. They might come back to it and it then works. But usually the people who succeed when they do that are those who are already in a position where they're ready to hit the ground running. So they already have some business expertise, some business knowledge. They maybe have some good contact network. They've already got an idea of a product they want to deliver, and they already have existing skills that are transferable. For other people who leave their job and go for it, doesn't necessarily mean if they don't have those things that they're going to fail, but they will have a lot of learning to do in the beginning, and there probably is going to be a lot of strife. There's going to be a lot of challenge. They're going to have to overcome quite a lot of adversity. And I think that was definitely the case for Brian, without a doubt. He didn't have much business knowledge at all, and he went through a very difficult period at first. And I do appreciate that's not for everybody. So the alternative is to set something up while you still have an income. And that's precisely what I did. So I used to work in the oil and gas industry. I worked in the oil and gas industry for a long, long time, straight from school. And it was a really good job. You know, it was well paying. It had, you know, lots of good perks, a pension, all of that, various different things. But for me, I just wasn't happy at all. You know, it was very much a job where you just pay the bills. And that's fine if people want to go down that route. That's totally cool. I'm not making any judgment on that at all. But for me, there was always a sense of restlessness. I always wanted to do more. I wanted to help people, you know, with their issues. I was so fascinated by the human mind. I believed that I was in the wrong job. So what I decided to do was to set up a business or a couple of businesses on the sides. I was quite fortunate. So I was working shifts. I was working 12-hour shifts. So I had a lot of time off in between. It was still very grueling at the same time. But, you know, it did give me a fair amount of time during the day and at weekends, of course, as well, where I could set up the business, make some mistakes, you know, learn what needed to be learned, so I could actually hit the ground running. So I got it to a stage where I was earning a reasonable income. It wasn't a massive income from the business, but it was reasonable enough so that I didn't absolutely, you know, throw myself into some sort of pit of terror of having to pay the bills and having no money. So there was still a certain element of security. So it was quite a seamless transition for me. It really was. So, but again, so that I think for me, that's my preferable option. And I think that fits for most people. You know, some people jumping off the cliff face, that's going to work for them. But I think the vast majority of the people, they need that smoother transition. So anytime I'm working with clients, say in a kind of business capacity, if I'm coaching them, then that's usually the one I recommend. It would depend on their circumstances, but I think it's good to make your mistakes while you still have an income, and then you have that smoother transition. You can still feed yourself and your family when you do eventually go for it.
Well, that's it. Well, what you've basically said there kind of really resonates with me because that's what I'm doing. Doing my day job, my care assistant job, and doing NLP with Parky work on my days off, so to speak, you know. And yeah, that's kind of definitely resonates with me. And yeah, it's never get. And a message I always like to get out there is never give up. You know what I mean? It's if it doesn't, if things are slow at the beginning, just again, it's snowballing up the hill, you know, never give up, you know.
I think
take off.
I think it is, and I think it really is important to have a positive mindset. And I know like positive thinking can get a wee bit of a bad rap. It's a wee bit cheesy sometimes, but I think the time to be positive is when things are difficult. There's a great personal development speaker, sadly he's no longer with us, called Jim Rohn. And he used to have a lovely little turn of phrase where he says, think summer all winter, but think winter all summer. And what he meant by that is when it's winter, when times are really tough and difficult, you want to be creating that really positive vision inside your mind of, a better future. And you want to move towards that. If you don't do that, then you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to drown yourself in the difficulties and the challenge. And then when things are going well, you actually want to do the opposite. You want to think winter. A lot of people, when things start to really work, they get a little bit complacent. And I've been there in business, definitely. I know Brian has as well. And you start loving it. You're having a great time and you think, oh, this is super easy. And then before you know it, boom, you get hit in the face or hit in the ass or whatever, and all of a sudden, you're back to square one. Maybe your venture fails, and you start not getting clients in, and you start to struggle. So I think it's important when you're doing really well to actually think, okay, what if things were to go wrong, and how can I actually get past those? What things can I put in place so that those things don't actually ruin my business? But I guess to go back to the original point, when things are difficult, I think it really is important to think summer when it's winter, because that's the thing that gets you through it. It's that positive image of a better life, of a better future, of a more fulfilling career, of actually making it a success. That's the thing that's going to give you the fuel. That's the thing that's going to move you forward. And also, really thinking about why you're doing it in the first place. We often do this at the start, but then when we get going and times get tough, we sometimes temporarily forget our why. So I think it really is important to spend some time every now and again to connect with why we're doing this in the first place. What's this going to give me? How's it going to benefit, the world at large, the greater community? Why is this so important? And that's the thing that really gives you energy. That's the thing that gives you momentum. There's a really interesting story. I forget the guy's name, but I think it was about 15 years ago. And basically, this guy was walking along the road. It was in America. And he looked over and he saw this young guy who was cycling in this really busy road. And as he was cycling along, this car came along and basically crashed into him. And he got pulled under the car and he was trapped under the car. So this guy who was witnessing the event, instantly, his fatherly instincts kicked in and he rushed over to help this boy. And without even thinking about it, he lifted up this car. I think it was a Chevrolet Camaro. I might be, if you're a car aficionado, I've probably butchered that. But this car was ridiculously heavy. But this guy managed to lift the car up and free the boy. And they actually found out in retrospect that he'd broke the world record for deadlifting by 3 times. And he wasn't an athlete. I think he was a builder or something like that. And the next day he just went back to his job. And I think this goes to show what we can do when something greater is at stake. When we really tap into, the greater cause behind what we're actually doing, it gives us so much power, so much energy and desire that we can move mountains. We can potentially even lift cars. So I think really tapping into that energy, that deeper why can give us that energy. It gives us that determination, that resilience to move forward through difficult times. And I think that's even, aside from business, I think that's a really important life lesson. Whatever it is that we're doing, whatever our job is, whatever our career is, wherever we are in life, if we are struggling, figure out why you're doing what you're doing, and that's going to help you move forward.
Definitely, yeah. And one of my favourite sayings is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't always make it drink. Right? Through your own experience and all your vast 20-odd years experience, was there any way you through what tactics or whatever can lead the horse to drink? Is there any specific things you can do, or just it's anyway, and anything you can advise people to do?
Yeah. So is this if you've got someone who is who needs to change, but maybe doesn't quite want to change enough to actually do anything?
Yeah, and they're kind of limited resources, for example. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of struggling a bit, it's and a bit doubtful in their mind. Why choose hypnosis and NLP?
Yeah, sorry, for some reason it just clicked offline there, which was kind of weird, man. So you might have a wee bit of editing. You'll have a wee bit of editing to do there.
That's all right. No bother. Don't worry about that. It's fine. No bother.
Don't know if you just want to ask that question again, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, no bother. I was just one of my favourite sayings is you could lead a horse to water, but you can't always make it drink. Through your expertise and your years of experience, is there any kind of ways you can get around that? Nobody force, nobody, for example, dragging people into the sessions, or you will come to my sessions, you will drink. You know, is there any kind of subtleties that you can use? You know, like, through your learned, through your years' experience.
I've just got this picture now of you dragging a client in and making them drink water somewhere in your therapy room, Martin. Now, so yeah, no, I guess the question you're asking there is if you have someone who clearly needs to change, but they don't quite have the desire or the motivation to actually do anything about that change. Yeah, it's a great question, and it is very, very common. I guess you don't really want to go down the route of unsolicited help where you're forcing people to change. I think that's a really bad idea. But there are some things that can help you bring a person up to the point where they're ready to change. There's an old kind of thing in sort of psychology, I think it came from psychotherapy, is that you can't really change someone if they don't want to change. And that is true, but I think a big part of being a coach or being a therapist is to actually bring a person up to that point where they are ready to change. I think that is one of the responsibilities of a good coach or a good therapist. I think it's a wee bit of a cop-out to just blame that on the client sometimes when people say, oh, they weren't ready to change. Well, you want to be doing something to get them up to that point. I think usually people don't make big changes in their life, especially if it's to do with lifestyle changes. So say, for example, something like weight loss or, stopping smoking or, something like that. They don't usually make big lifestyle changes until that change becomes a must, until they reach what we often refer to as a threshold moment or a tipping point. It's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I think we all have these from time to time where you just reach that point in your life where you suddenly realize that enough is enough. I'm going to change. I'm going to do something about it. That's the kind of effect, or that's the kind of thing you want to create in your clients, so that they're very much ready to change. They're like it's like, doggy biscuits to the starving Doberman, so to speak. I don't know if that's a very good analogy. To give you an example, so for me, I used to smoke cigarettes way back when I was, a teenager, and this went into my early 20s. And I smoked enough for it to be a pretty solid habit. I think I smoked roughly about 20 a day. And I tried to stop a few times and it didn't really work. It was pretty much, half-arsed efforts. But then I went to visit my gran in hospital, and, she had been smoking for, 40, 50 years. She was in a hell of a state. She had all sorts of stuff going on. Her teeth were all yellow and grey. It was just horrendous, and she could hardly breathe and she could hardly do anything. And in that moment, just seeing that was such a profound experience for me. It was a lot of negativity to it, but that negativity turned into energy, and it actually pushed me to that tipping point, that threshold moment where I suddenly realized enough was enough. I had to do something about this. This had to end. And for me, it was almost like I saw myself maybe 30 or 40 years from now, looking just like that. And it scared the bejesus out of me. And in that moment, I made the decision to change. So this is what we refer to as a threshold moment, or when you reach some kind of tipping point. So I think that's the kind of thing you want to create in your clients, or create in your friends if you want to go down that route, to actually motivate them to do something about it, to actually, create some sort of change in their life, even if that first step is going to see a coach or going to see a therapist. So some great questions to ask them is, what would it be like if you didn't change? How would that negatively impact your life? How would it negatively impact your life over a longer period of time? How would it affect you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, potentially even financially? And then you could also look at the positive side as well. If you were to change, how would that positively enrich your life in so many different ways? What new opportunities would this start to open up when you do start to create these wonderful changes in your life? And what that does is it almost like creates the kind of carrot and the stick, so that the person feels motivated to change. These were always pretty much the first questions. When I started off doing, client work, these were pretty much the first questions that I would always ask a person. It gives you good information, but it also pushes the person up to that point where they are ready to change. They're good to go. They feel motivated. They have that sense of desire. So anything you do after with them is going to be so much more powerful because you've actually brought them up to that point. So that's there's lots of ways you can do this, but that's a very kind of simple way just to create a bit more motivation, a bit more desire, so they actually do want to change. So yeah, so I think that's a very good start to get them up to that point so that they're good to go.
That's really very helpful and really a good insight on how to go about things like that. But just a wee sideways shift, if I know you like to use that, using fits in nicely with the Change Academy, Change Experts Academy. I'm curious. There you go. How do you know what content to include in the Change Experts Academy? And by the way, I really would recommend it because it's when people hear me talking about going to the academy or being in the academy, people hear me talking about that a lot. When I'm talking about NLP and hypnosis and stuff like that, and the business in general, you know, are you going to school? No. I'm in the Change Experts Academy. You know how I would highly recommend it, as I say. But how do you know what content to put on? Is it knowing what people are looking for, or is it just experience, or is there any comments you'd like to make on that?
Yeah, so the Change Experts Academy is, of course, for coaches and therapists, people who want to get out there and make a difference in the world using their skills, using their expertise. And for most people, that's one-to-one coaching. But for others, it could be doing, group work, doing presentations. It could be doing, Zoom calls, things like that. So I think through the years we've noticed what elements need to be in place for people to actually get out there and make a difference as what we call a change expert, as a coach or as a therapist. So we do have a wee bit of experience in that, but I think it's ultimately about doing research. It's about keeping your eyes and ears open and paying attention to what people want, what people need, the pieces that have to be in place for them to move forwards, in this particular discipline, and then putting together content that's relevant to that. And then, of course, getting feedback, seeing if people like it, if they're enjoying it, and if they are enjoying it, you do more of that sort of stuff. You kind of double down on it. Or if maybe it's not quite as good, if it's not resonating with people, then maybe changing their approach. So I think, again, that this comes back, I guess, to an earlier point we talked about, is it really is a fundamental part of business. And I think I'm learning this more and more as I become a business owner, is you want to do research and figure out what people want, what are people talking about, what do they actually need in order to accomplish their goals, in order to move forward in life, whatever it is that they're doing. And if you can figure out that piece, then business is a lot easier as a result. In fact, most of the time when people make mistakes in business and they create products that maybe don't work, that aren't resonating with people, it's because they haven't taken the time to actually do the research first. They've created something that maybe they like or they think someone likes, but actually it's not really a good fit with them. So they have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit, take some feedback, suck it up a little bit. We all have to do it. And then, figure out how to create something that people really, really do want. So it's very much a lesson in what we call strategic empathy. So empathy is where you step into the shoes of someone else, when you really look at the world through their perspective. And this is an essential skill as a business owner. It's essential when it comes to building relationships. You've got to be able to see things from other people's perspectives, other people's viewpoints. But I think it's especially relevant in business so that you can really understand how they think, how they talk about the problems, the kind of things they want solved, so you can then craft solutions that really fit their needs. So to summarize, I think it really is just about doing that first step and always reminding yourself that, the business is not about you as the business owner. It's actually about the customers. It's about the clients. They're the most important people in any business. So you've got to see things from their perspective and create products that fit their needs.
And just another question I've got here is, when you, after the client sessions, whether it's NLP or whether it's hypnosis or a combination of both, or how would you advise the clients to take their new learnings out into the world and be a success with their new learnings? Is there any advice you can give people?
Sure. So is this like if people have done like a coaching course or have done like a CBT course or an NLP course, and they're looking to take their skills and fully integrate them. I think just practice. I think this goes with pretty much any skill that you're looking to develop. Is, you know, the more that you do it, then the better you're going to get. And of course, you want to get feedback. You want to give yourself feedback, get feedback from the people you're working with as well. Don't take it personally. It's such a hard thing to do. You know, when things don't work out, people tend to take it personally and start to think, oh, that means I'm not good enough. I was never good enough to do this. It's nothing to do with that. It's just a learning process like anything else. It's like, you know, when we first started to learn to walk, you know, we didn't do it perfectly the first time. In fact, we failed several times. But of course, as a toddler, you didn't turn around to your mum or your dad and say, oh, I guess that means I'm not good enough to walk. I'll just, you know, be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. That's not how things work. You looked at it. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? You made some adjustments, and eventually you managed to balance yourself, and then you managed to walk. It's the same with any skill. You know, one of the things I love to do, we've discussed this before, is I love to dance. So I do several different types of Latin dancing. And I think, you know, learning to dance is actually a really, really useful transferable skill. It can be transferred to all kinds of different things. And when I was dancing, when I was learning to dance, you get feedback from the teacher, and you've got to learn to take that feedback, you know, properly and not take it personally, and actually then adjust your approach and change what you do. And that crucial piece is really essential when it comes to business. You've got to try things out, you know, practice, you know, take your skills that you've learned, really put them into practice. And if things aren't working, just give yourself feedback, try something else, do some more learning, and then move on from there. So yeah, so I think once people who have done like a coaching course or an NLP course, it is about just getting out there, just practicing, just really going for it. That's what I love about what you're doing, Martin. You're really getting out there and going for it and working with clients and doing a great job. And that is the way to get good. And that is not just people who have finished a course. I think that's relevant for anyone, no matter where you are. You have to keep on practicing, keep on improving, and eventually you'll reach a place where the skills become second nature. They become subconscious, and you just kind of do it. So yeah, so keep practicing, keep going for it, and just be relentless in your development.
And even from a client's perspective, you know, you get through change work in your sessions, and even in when you're doing like seminars or whatever, you know, how would you advise them to kind of keep their skills up to your new learnings up to date? You know what I mean? Like, oh, transformation, it's been amazing, but on the longer term, how would you keep so they remember what they achieved in their sessions? You know, because you know how sometimes you don't use it, or you know how you can lose it, or use it or lose it, sort of thing. You know, it's from a customer client point of view. How would you advise them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because we talk about transformation as if it's a thing, as if we can kind of log on to Amazon and, you know, buy a lump of transformation, and we download it to our brains, and that's us. We're sorted. But really, when you get down to it, transformation is a process. Change is a process. We experience a change, but the change itself is an ever evolving process, something that never ends. And transformation is the same. So I think, you know, when we're working with students, if in a teaching capacity, we're always, you know, driving in the idea that this is the first step. You know, you've experienced a real big transformation on this training, but, you know, transformation is something that's happening rather than something that happens. So this is just the first step on an ever-evolving process that's never going to end. And I think it's the same when you're working with clients as well. You want to let them know that any changes that they experience is really a milestone towards something even greater. I mean, even when I think back to my own NLP journey, you know, when I did that very first course way back in 1999 with Paul McKenna, Dr. Richard Bander, and this other guy called Michael Breen. So on that course, so I met a guy, Scottish guy who lives in Kent. And he asked me if I wanted to go down and do like a talk down in Kent for an organization called Jumpers. So they're kind of International Trampoline Institute or something like that. And so I was very young at the time. I was only 21, and actually I was just recovering from a phobia of public speaking. So even though I'd made quite a bit of progress in this phobia of public speaking, the idea of going and delivering a full day like training course was still pretty nerve-wracking, I have to be honest. But I'd made up my mind I wanted to do this. I'd pushed myself over that threshold. I knew my why, and I was really kind of like I wanted to do this. So I went down to Kent, and like I said, I was honestly, I was absolutely, if you excuse my French, I was absolutely shitting myself before it, because I was having to do this presentation, and it was very nerve-wracking. But I went through it, and everything was totally fine, and it was okay. And I think from that, I got this amazing experience that felt absolutely fantastic. So I remember leaving, the training room thinking, I've done it. That is amazing. I've really got over that first big major hurdle. But for me, that was very much a stepping stone, because from that, I decided, okay, maybe I could actually do some more training. Maybe I could do some presentations. So I set up like a practice group from my house, and it was only to like maybe 3 or 4 people at first, and then I eventually hired a room, and that gave me a lot of confidence to speak in front of an audience. And then from there, I started doing some training courses, some short seminars. Then I started doing practitioner courses. Then teamed up with Brian, who of course we both know, and it led to so many other things. But the catalyst for me was that very first moment when I got asked by Alex, the guy from Kent, to come down and do that presentation. So you don't ever want to stop at any kind of great moment in your career, or great moment in your journey towards transformation, or your journey towards making some sort of change. Always see it as a milestone to something greater, some larger and much more meaningful journey. So I think I always want to embed that idea. So that's a very long, winded answer to your question there, Martin, but hopefully it's been useful. I think it's always about appreciating that change is not static. It's not something that just happens. It's an ever-evolving process. Transformation is something that hopefully will be continuing to unfold through time. I think if you always embed that idea in students and clients, and also in your own mind, then you'll always keep going. It's something that's always unfolding.
That's great. And just to wrap up, if that's all right with yourself, Steve, is there anything you would like to add about NLP and hypnosis in life in general that we haven't covered at all?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Let me think. I think no matter what you do in life, whether you whatever career you decide, I think you've got to ultimately look at your happiness and fulfillment. And that doesn't mean that you should always feel good in life. I think a lot of the time we're attempting to feel good all the time. And when we feel bad, we do things like we self-medicate in order to feel good. We maybe drink alcohol, we smoke cigarettes, we take drugs, we do stuff like that. We do pacifying acts. But I think it's about, I think it's about moving away from always wanting to feel good about things. And it's about feeling happy. It's about feeling fulfilled. And it's about having a life that is meaningful. I think if you're doing that, no matter what it is that you're doing, even if you're not earning too much money, then if you're living a life that is meaningful, that is fulfilling, that brings you joy, that brings you happiness, even if there are many moments of challenge, of adversity, of tribulation where you feel bad, that's okay. In the grand scheme of things, at the end of the day, you'll feel like you've lived a meaningful life, and you'll feel like you've done all you can to actually really make a difference. So I think for me, that's what it's all about, and I think that's why I love, Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP. I loved his philosophies. It was never about, being some sort of big shot. It was never about being some sort of, multi-million pound successful business owner. It was all about doing what you could do in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's a great goal in life, irrespective of what you do. So I think that's always a message I want to get across to people. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're happy, as long as you're fulfilled, and as long as you're getting meaning out of what you do. That's the most important thing.
That's great. And honestly, Steve, I honestly appreciate your time. Remember, everybody, Mindschool, Scottish Centre of NLP, and NLP with Parky. Honestly, Steve, thank you so much for your time. It really means a lot to myself, taking time out of your busy schedule to make time for us. us, myself and the wider audience. Your insight has been absolutely amazing. It's been absolutely fantastic, and hopefully I'll catch up with you soon. And thanks for everything. And take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for asking me. There's always a pleasure.